Alright, so we went with 2 for the distance, 2 pixels for the size. And that was our hover state. And then the last thing we need to do is change the current. So that'll be very similar. We'll probably just beef that up a little bit. So inner shadow. Let's see what the defaults look like. Let's maybe back off just a little bit. All right, so let's go with that. All right, so now we just need to decide if we want to change the text at all. And what I'm going for here is I don't want quite so much contrast on the non-selected buttons. So we'll just change this by making sure that we go to the correct state. So the regular state for the text has a T next to it to make it easy to identify. Go in there and I'll just lighten it up to like probably an 80% gray. Just go over here to the swatches panel. Okay, so that just has a little bit less contrast. Here, since this one we only see when the mouse is hovered over, we could make a slight change to that as well. Maybe we maybe we can make it so it almost looks like this is glowing a little bit. It's up to you. You just don't want to make it look too gaudy. But let's go into the hover for the text. Let's put a little effect on here, and this time let's go with inner glow. Okay, so inner glow is not working so well because it's just affecting the text only. So actually what I need is an outer glow for that text. So we'll go to outer glow. And see, it just brightens it up a little bit, like the text itself is glowing. And we can monkey around with the opacity depending on how much of an effect we want here. And I'll just go with that. Okay, so now that we have the 3 states of our button, we're going to want to do 2 things. We're going to want to save this file, and probably should have been saving all along. And we'll save this in our non-web folder. So it's going to take me a while to navigate to my folder. Okay, so inside of my folder here, I'll go into my non-web, which means the stuff that doesn't get published, and just save this just in case I need to go back in and make any changes if this didn't work out quite the way I wanted. So I'll call this Sprite Home, and notice I'm saving as in the native Photoshop PSD. Go ahead, save that. And then if there were one of these effects that was too much, then I can go back to this file at any time, and all I have to do is double click on effects, and it takes me right back into this panel, and I can go back into the inner shadow, change those numbers. So that's great. But let's say that we like this, then we're going to do File, Save for Web. We need to pick the right resolution. Now, since we have transparency here and here that lets us see through, that we have to go with a GIF or a PNG. And since these are pretty small, and we know the PNG 24 is probably the best option, even though it makes it a little bit bigger, let's go with that. So I happen to have one defaulted here, but let me just, for sake of review, just show you how you would set that up. So you'd select any one of these states. When you first go in here, it may look like this, and you could click 4 up so that you could see 4 at a time. Just click on any one of them, and then change the preset to PNG 24. Make sure that transparency is checked, and that should be all that you have to do. The rest of this, just as is, should be good. You may want to double check the size just to make sure there's no surprises there, but if you set everything up, you should be good. Then we'll click Save, making sure that this is the one that's selected, the PNG 24. And then this time we'll navigate to our Images folder. Okay, and make sure again that it's saving properly, and we can use the same exact name because 1, we have a different extension, and 2, it's going in a different folder. And Naming your images with the little separates them from the other ones first, it helps because it puts them all in one area. Like here you can see all my thumbs are in one place, all my test images are in another place. Okay, so click Save. So we now have one done. Um, I'm going to now, I need to make two more. I need to make one for contacts, one for portfolio. I'm not going to show you every step again because that would be kind of silly, but I'm going to run through just the key features, the thing that you want to get different when you're using something with a much longer word in here. So and the other thing too is when we go file new here, we already know what the height is. That's not going to change. So we knew from last time that was 39. This came out to like 216, I think it was. So we know it's going to at least be that big. So because it's a bigger word, I'll go with that. That'll put us pretty close. RGB. So we're pretty good there. Okay, then type my word in there, making sure that I have my text set up the same as before, which it'll probably default to everything, but if not, we'll just double check that it's at Helvetica 18, regular, type away. We'll set the inside of preferences. Go back and set this to 13, because we had three divisions of 13 inside of there. So we click OK. This will help us place this up and down wise. So I'll just zoom in here a little bit. And it'll also help us place it to the left. So we want to get that nice and sharp right on the left edge. Then we'll use that same trick as before. We'll move this over in here. Now you see how it's snapping on the grids. It's hard for me to place this. I can go up here, I can go to view, and I can turn the snap off. Now when I bring this out, it'll let me place it where I want it. Again, on a circle, you place it just a little bit over. We have a fairly solid edge zoomed in this far. And again, just for aesthetics, we're actually going to go a little bit further on this because just from experience, that tells me that that's what worked out the best. So instead of going exactly 13, we'll go 14, 15 again. All right, so we're 15 pixels away from there. Then we just need to figure out what this distance is here. So we double click in here. With this guide dragged out from the ruler, I can see that I am exactly at 90. So now we're going to go back into here and the preferences, grids, guides, and slices, change this to 90 pixels. Then we just have to remember that we need it to be 3 times that big. If I double click on the hand tool, you can see it's not quite big enough. So we're going to go into image, canvas size, and we're going to make that change inside of canvas size, and we want it to grow from left to right. In other words, nothing adds on to the left side, only to the right. And then we change that to 90 times 3, which is 270. Click on OK. If I double click on the hand tool and bring everything into focus, now we're good. And then we just have to repeat the steps that we did on the other one. So I'll go ahead and do that and get back with you. This is probably obvious to most of you, but you do need to, when you move these things over, this time of course move them over 90 pixels instead of 70 like we did last time. So you're always going to change that accordingly to how big you make each box. Okay, we now have our 3 different buttons made, each with 3 different states. Now we're going to go into Dreamweaver and we're going to change out the current navigation. Okay, and I want to get rid of this and go back to the site that we had before. And I'm going to go ahead and strip out all of the HTML and CSS so that we can build a gallery, not a gallery, but a navigation system together. So let me do that real quick. Okay, so all I have done is inside of the div of my header, I've gone ahead and made an unordered list, which is a perfect starting point for navigation. So I just have my list items of home, portfolio, contact. Now I should surround this with a navigation tag just because that's recommended for HTML5. But before we do that, I just want you to see something real quick. So if we take a look at this in a browser, there is what will become our navigation. And because it's an unordered list, it has these dots in front of it. So when we go into Dreamweaver, I'm just going to surround this with the nav tag. So I can either do that by hand or with the tag wrapper. Okay, now when we preview this in Firefox, nothing should change. But look at that, the dots are gone. And this is actually an interesting thing for you to see because that threw me for a loop at first. So back in Dreamweaver, there must be something written for the nav. Well, how do you find out? One, if it's a small bit of code, you could just go search over here for it manually, but there's a lot of stuff written in here. And actually, if you search for it, you won't see anything that just says nav by itself. So here's a way to search is be clearly inside of here with your cursor. In fact, sometimes it even helps to just make sure you're making the perfect selection like that using this tag selector. And then you may have noticed that this little thing kind of looks like a icon for a ship comes up here. It's a code navigator. If it doesn't pop up for you, what you can do is hold down the Option and Command key and then click and it pops up. Now, so if I look through here, I don't see anything written that just says nav, but oh, wait a minute. Here is some stuff that's in for a whole lot of stuff, and it includes nav. So let's double click on that and see what it brings up. So it should take us right into the CSS for it, and it's telling us that it has some display options set. Maybe that's not exactly the one that I'm looking for. And if I keep searching, try that one more time. Just go in here, Option, Command, click, search again. I do see, ooh, nav UL. So what this means is that any unordered list inside of a nav has CSS written for, and I don't even have to double click in there to see it. This is what I'm looking at right there. It says US or list style none, and that's what gets rid of the dots. So it's a good thing to know how to search for this stuff. It doesn't really affect us. In fact, it saves us a step. We don't have to write that in our CSS. So what I want to do then is just copy all of this into, well, actually before I do that, let's go ahead and set these buttons to be functional here. So and then we'll copy it in the other two pages and we'll change it around. So all we need to do is simply set where these buttons are going to go to. So a super easy way to do that is just double click on the thing that you want to become a button, go down to here and make sure that this is set to HTML, and next to the link area to the right of it you just grab this point to file and go over here and point to the file that you want that to go to. So since that's the home button, that'll go to index. Sometimes it's a lot easier, especially when my screen resolution is set this small to make movies, to open this up and then point. And we can close up things that don't need to be open in here, and now we can see there's our couple of pages there. And so now we'll go back and grab that pointer and point to this file. It's going to be hard for me to show you this in here. Let me just see if I can one time. Okay, so grab the pointer, drag it so that it's on top of the thing that you want to point to, which in our case is index. Okay, and then when it's on index, you let it go. It automatically puts that in here. If you go back to the code over here, you can see that it programmed that automatically, so it made that a link. Okay, now I'll do the same thing to portfolio and contact. And I just want to save you a little bit of work here. I'm going to show you one thing that we'll add to these all right now is we're going to give them all a class, and we'll just say class equals, and we'll give it the name of what it'll say on the button. So class equals home for this one, class equals portfolio for this one, and you'll see that we need this to make the code work. spot. That should be right here after these quotation marks.